record on this computer. So whether you're watching us live or whether you are watching it on Memorex, no, on YouTube, welcome to the January 2021 P3, Paul's Patreon Peeps, PD Professional Development on Relationships. If everyone wants to do a little wave real quick, that this will be recorded for people. And then now what's going to happen is I'm going to change it to spotlight me. And so that will put me as the recording so that when people are watching this, they're not like, where's Paul? Where's Paul? If you've joined us before, I love to keep these to 30 minutes. And then we turn off the camera. And if we've got some people who want to stick around and chat a little bit, awesome. I am going to experiment today with, in addition to throwing people into the breakout rooms at the beginning, I'm going to give us the option at the end of our recorded session to jump back into small groups for just a few minutes to ask what of the content was the most helpful to me. What is the stuff I'm going to take away and use? And for you all to spend just a minute saying, is there anything Paul could talk about that might help us flesh some things out or where we could go? And then we'll just see how about 5 or 6 minutes of that affects our discussion. And then I will also, my other thing is at the end of our time together, I'm going to zoom a link out to you for you to take a 4-question eval so that I can learn what worked, what didn't, and maybe if you've got any topics for us to explore for 2021. The topic today is relationships. And if you've seen me speak before, you know that when I'm doing a professional development conference, when I'm hanging out with college student leaders, just about every group, I tend to think of personal development, professional development in 2 content areas: reaching out skills, helping people be more effective at connecting with each other, and then reaching in skills, bringing your best self to work, to school, to leadership, to life. And my thought is with 2021, what I'm going to try to do with our topics is go back and forth, is have January's be about a reaching out skill, and then have February maybe be a little bit more leaning in and reaching in, and then just go back and forth that way. I am going to turn off the notifications that people are coming and going so that because that way, if I hear that bell too much, I'll think, they're leaving, they don't like me, oh no. And I get to do something I have not done for years in presentations. Having a whiteboard or having a flip chart is not something that I get to do anymore. It's almost always a slide. But I decided I don't like using slides and Zooms. It takes up the whole screen. And, you know, I think I move around a lot. I think I'm interesting, and I think that should be the big screen. So I'm going to a whiteboard with a clipboard. And if we go all the way back to my days at UW-Madison, and Holly is in the house with me, we both worked in residence life, and I will say names because she will even remember. Actually, I can't get to the woman's name. But anyway, the front desk workers at UW-Madison, there was an employee that worked in each of the residence halls staffing the mail room, and they had to supervise student employees and help staff that area. And these were folks sometimes without college degrees, certainly were never given any training in supervision and management kind of things. And their role had evolved from just sorting the mail and dealing with students and questions like this to actually supervising students who were there for work study and stuff. And so the gal who supervised them reached out to me and said, I'm wondering if you could do a session for them on conflict management. And even back this would have been in 92, 93-ish. So years before I was going to be doing speaking and training full time, but already when I was daydreaming about doing it full time. And so one of the things a mentor had said to me is, anytime you have a chance to present, anytime, grab it and take it. So I said, yes, absolutely. And I ended up starting the presentation with something I completely made up that I have used in probably 500 presentations since. And what I said to them is that anytime you have 2 people in a interpersonal interaction, you have 2 things that connect them. You have relationship or lack thereof, and you have communication or lack thereof. And then another element that exists in any interpersonal interaction eventually, and I would draw this little goofy star thing in the middle, is conflict. And so relationship, communication, and conflict were the three little things that I talked about in the presentation. And what has happened is that this model has ended up coming how I break down and talk about interpersonal skills in my full day retreats that I do with staff. We usually spend the morning on reaching out and the afternoon on reaching in. And this is what we do. We talk about people. I sometimes talk about Myers-Briggs stuff, sometimes other things about personality traits. Terry would probably remember DISC and some other things that we used in higher education a lot. And then we talk about relationship, building relationships, communication skills to work on, and then conflict, and framing conflict as not as something bad that comes along that we need to take care of, but instead as an inevitable part of any interpersonal connection. And it's not a question of if there will be conflict. It's not a question of is something wrong because there's conflict. It's how are we going to deal with conflict? And one of the things Jill and I have talked about a little bit, Jill, my 7th grade girlfriend, who is a lifelong friend and lives with me here in Cincinnati. Sorry, Jill, we're stuck with that. It's forever.
I love it.
And who is, by the way, an author of a book. I should show a picture. She cranked out a cool book of short stories. Jill and I were talking about these sessions, and she was saying, hey, they could be longer because you have so much information. And how I went with that is I need to be presenting enough information that feels right for 30 minutes. So my goal today is to present enough information that feels like this is a good use of your time, but not that it feels like I'm cramming in information. So I'm going to experiment with lightening the load a little bit, but there's 2 little chunks of information. And the first one is about these standard relationship tips. So usually when I go through this, I share a couple tips about maintaining healthy relationships, some tips about communication, and again, this can be applicable to workplace, family stuff, anything, and then conflict. What I'm going to do today is just share 4 tips that come up when I do this. And the best thing you can be doing right now is to be thinking about some relationships that you're in right now that are strained, that are maybe pulled a little bit. And the quickest way this is going to stick for you is if you're thinking how might some of these apply to that person. And the other thing you probably have seen me do, but this is what I've been doing more and more instead of slides, is putting something over in the chat window. So right now I'm going to put a link. And if you click on that link, your browser should pop open what looks like a slide and is a slide that actually is usually I show at the end. So usually my slides are just a picture of that pig chewing on lettuce and then just the bank. And then after I explain these 4 tips, I turn people loose in small groups and say, which one of these could help you in a specific relationship? The first thing is about veggies are gross. And if you don't know this, I have a lifelong hatred of vegetables. And I spent a lot of time trying to not eat vegetables. And the big breakthrough that I had when I was working at Beloit College a million years ago, it was Nutrition Week on our campus. And there were these little food pyramids back when nutrition was framed in the food pyramid. And I was looking in there, and you're supposed to eat a lot of the fruits and vegetables, a little bit less grains, just a little bit of meat, and then sweets and stuff bad. And I realized that nowhere on the food pyramid does it say like vegetables. What does it say? It says eat them. Eat them. Don't love them. Eat them. And the next bite of salad that I took sitting there at Beloit College, it didn't taste as horrible and disgusting. And as I started eating vegetables more and more just to do it and not trying to like it, it got easier to eat them. And I bring this up to say we don't always have to like the people we work with, the people in the groups that we serve, even the people in our family. We got to get along with them. And if you know Myers-Briggs stuff, and you know that you're what I call a heart person or a strong feeling person, you tend to lead with emotional information. You might already know about yourself that you tend to be somebody that wants to like everyone and wants everyone to like you. And that's not into the world. Just know it's going to get in the way some, because not everyone's going to like you and you're not going to like everyone, and you don't have to. And so the first tip is veggies are gross. Stop trying to like them. Is there somebody in your life that you could actually get along with better if you stop trying to like them? That is, I often, for people who are heart people, that's my piece of advice. For people who are more head people and sometimes go, like if you're the person that when they start the meeting, you're more likely to go first item on the agenda. And then one of the heart people says, oh, let's start with an icebreaker. How are you? And you roll your eyes, you might be a head person. And if you're a head person, the piece of advice is it can be useful to think of relationships as emotional bank accounts. This is something Stephen Covey talks about in 7 Habits, and lots of other folks do too. And the idea is, if Holly and I are working on a committee together, that anytime we spend some time getting to know each other, that's going to be a deposit. We can understand each other better. Anytime I make a commitment and follow through, that's a deposit. Anytime she says, oh, why don't we do this? And then that turns out to be a good thing, that's a deposit. Withdrawals, inevitable in any relationship. And the idea with this is to build up enough deposits so that there can be some withdrawals without it bankrupting the relationship. And when I'm working with a group where they work together as opposed to a conference where they're all coming together, if it's a group that works together a lot, one of the times I have them think about sometimes maybe when things were a little strained within the group. And a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, when you see conflict really spiraling out of control and people aren't feeling like they get along very well, sometimes it's because of sometimes it's because of withdrawals, but many times it's because of a lack of deposits. And so rather than there being some big rift that caused the original problem, it became, we're not getting to know each other. We don't have a sense of respect and trust and positive regard in the relationship. And so that in and this is what I think absolutely is happening right now. And the reason things are as bad as they are with polarization, it's because for about 15, 20 years, we've had a situation where there has been reduced levels of trust and respect. And especially, not to take too big of a tangent, but especially with polarization, or with gerrymandered districts, it used to be that most people in Congress had to get at least a chunk of votes from the other party that they were in order to get reelected. And so they could be pretty strong Republican or pretty strong Democrat, but they had to be moderate enough. And so as a result, there was a little bit more time in political cycles where Republicans and Democrats would work together on legislations, because even if they had to hold their nose to vote for it, they knew this was going to keep a couple of their folks handy. And as a result, without needing that, most of our congressional districts are gerrymandered. They're outlined so that the person that's getting elected, their party is pretty safely going to get elected in that district. They don't have to do the give and take as much. There's, I also read some incredible stories about the fact that 50 years ago, most US senators lived in Washington, raised their kids, had their spouse in Washington, and their spouse was almost always a wife 50 years ago. And they had these dinner parties. And it was considered bad form for the Senate Wives Club to throw a party that only had members from your husband's own party. It was considered bad form. So you would always have a few Republicans and a few Democrats at these parties. What did they talk about? Well, their kids are going to the same school. Their spouses are spending social time together. There was a lot to talk about. Now, almost no one that serves Washington actually has a residence in DC where their families are at. Congress people actually usually rent apartments. They share apartments with each other. They go home to their families. Now, again, there's good about that. The idea that you're supposed to spend as much time as possible representing your state or your district, you should be living there. It makes sense. The cost is They're not spending as much time socializing and making deposits. The getting out of your chair is the idea of actually getting your butt out of a seat and looking at how somebody's looking at the world differently. If you've seen me present, you know that I spend a fair amount of my time when I'm doing half day, all day stuff, giving people a chance to switch which table they're at so that they're getting to know lots and lots of folks. And at this point in the presentation, I'm able to say, one of the reasons I got you up and around so much is because I don't want your butt to get tired. And another reason I got you moving so much is because of the value I place on perspective. And we get so used to sitting in our chair, looking at the world our way, and we forget. Mary Gurney and I go way back to UW days when she used to work at the School of Pharmacy. And some of my best AIDS Network volunteers, when I was director of volunteer services there, came from her program. And I remember Philip Trapskin and I can't remember his name, but these guys came into the orientation. And one of the things we used to do in orientation is I would get them and put up signs: strongly agree, disagree, strongly agree. Gay marriage should be legalized. Go stand where your honest opinion is. And they go stand where they are. And then I'd switch the signs and say, you've got 5 minutes to come up with the rational argument about why you disagree with this. And if your temptation to represent your point is like this, you're not doing it right. And the activity of being able to articulate the other person's point of view in a way that they would agree, yes, that's how I would say it, helps us in so many ways. It helps us better present ourselves. It helps us understand maybe how we can appeal to somebody if we're trying to influence them, or we can find out, oh, this isn't just because somebody is stupid or crazy or evil, which is our common go-to. The only people that could believe that have to be stupid or crazy or evil. Now, if by stupid you mean uninformed, yeah, there might be some folks over there who don't have the same information as you. But isn't there times when you're not as informed as you need to be about something? And crazy, yeah, they're being irrational maybe. Some of people on that other side might be thinking about this in a way that's irrational. But aren't there folks on our side that are sometimes less than rational? And evil, I believe that evil is an overused term. I do think evil exists. I think most of the time what we're talking about is people that are not acting with as much compassion as possible. And yes, there's some people on the other side of just about every issue that are lacking compassion when they talk about stuff and when they act. It's true of people on our side as well. And finally, accepting the gifts is going into every single relationship with the assumption that our paths were meant to cross and that there is a gift that this person has to offer and there is a gift that I have ultimately for this person, or at least that there is a gift for both of us in our paths crossing. And I know you all have most of you have seen me speak where we get everyone gets a little ripples card where they're getting a quote that they're supposed to get at this point in their life. And one of the tricks I love to do is I pass out these cards and I build up one of the 30 quotes is meant to find you. And then before I let them peek at what's on their card, I say, but the card you're holding isn't for you. It's for somebody else in the room. Because every time we cross paths with somebody, they have a message for us and we have a message for them. And what I get to do now when I'm online is use the quote pond. That's why the quote pond was built, actually, by the way.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So Mark Loy, my best friend Ron, his best friend, my best friend Ron's partner Mark, I called him one night and said, I've got a presentation for P&G tomorrow, Procter & Gamble. They just told me last night half the people that I'm presenting to are going to be remote and we can't get them Ripples cards. And he threw together a version of this Ripple quote pond. And if you see the link there, if you double click on it and then go and hit the Ripples logo, you'll see we've stocked it with 4,000 quotes. So if you want to click one, that's the quote you're supposed to get. You'll have the option during the breakout time to share with them what your quote is and why you were supposed to get it. Let's jump over, though, and talk about one other small chunk of information that I think might be useful. So one topic for the breakout session is going to be, if the assignment was that one of those 4 you had to use in a relationship, what would you do and why? Oh, the House voted to impeach. Update from Elizabeth. Breaking news. Let's discuss that for a while. Oh, no, wait, we have 3 minutes left. Social capital is a term I picked up a few years ago about the idea that relationships have value. And just like with financial capital or human capital, exploring potential, social capital is the idea that as you build up relationships, something like if you think about the deposits we were talking about, there's value that you can cash in, you can use as you have. And when I was asked to do a deep dive and refresh a networking breakout session that I do for a lot of conferences, I ended up using my social media folks to help me define 5 actions for increasing social capital. And what I'm going to do here is you're just going to write down 5 words. And the first one is initiate. Don't worry about trying to write down the instructions that are the descriptions that I'm putting in the chat. Just write the word initiate. That's the first one. And the definition is identifying and embracing opportunities to meet new people within and beyond an organization, profession, and community.
Hey, Paul, you just sent that just to me since I had sent the message to
Elizabeth,
you.
you're such a dear. Thank you. Sorry, everyone. This presentation is only for me and Elizabeth. And from now on, you're imposing on us. Thanks, Elizabeth. Initiate. Identify and embrace opportunities to meet new people within and beyond an organization, profession, and community. Now, here's the challenge, and here's the invitation. If I ask you right now to rate on a scale of 1 to 10, how you are doing right now at identifying and embracing opportunities to meet new people within and beyond your workplace, your profession, and community, how would you say you're doing at that? Give yourself a score, jot it down. Now, I'm going to go through these a little bit quickly, and then I'm going to put them all up on a slide for you, okay? So the next one is exploring. Routinely following up with new connections and getting to know professional acquaintances. So after you meet someone and say, oh my gosh, it was so fun to meet you, we should get together. How good on a scale of 1 to 10 are you at actually following up? Or if somebody else follows up with you, then saying, yes, let's do something with it. Scale of 1 to 10, it helps to score yourself as we go through. The third one really quickly is maintaining relationships. So after you've got an established relationships, regularly reaching out to existing connections via strategically chosen communication channels. So whether it's email or text or LinkedIn or social media or all the ways we have to connect, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at maintaining relationships? And some people at this point are finding themselves give 1 score personally and another score professionally, and that's okay if that ends up being applicable to you. The next one, we've got 2 more to do here real quick. Deepen relationships. So this is different than maintaining. This is about deepening, strengthening relationships that, strengthening your communication with relationships that you think have some potential. What would you say your score is at taking your existing relationships that are going just fine and saying, you know what? What about mentoring? What about a closer friendship? What if we plan to get together where a whole bunch of us get together and hang out and get to know each other better? On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you exploring deepening relationships? And then I'll add 1 more, repairing relationships, recognizing and addressing fractured connections. How good are you at saying, we need to talk, or I'm sorry? And I'll tell you what I'll do here now is I'm going to give you 1 more little slide. And if you click on it, you'll see that's the definition. And what I ask people to do in breakout sessions, and what I'm going to do here in a second is wrap up this 30-minute video. Stop. Did I? Oh, I did record. I just had a panic. I'm like, I didn't stop. I didn't press record. I did. Before I hit stop on record, what I will say to you is the instructions that I would give for these two conversations, usually they're separate, is for the first part, which of those 4 pieces of advice would you actually go use to work on a relationship? And with these 6, what I often have people to do is look at their list of scores and circle 1 or 2 that are their strengths. So if you were looking at the list and you're actually taking notes, did 1 or 2 of these 6 really stand out as strong? And if so, circle them. And the discussion topic is, how did they become strengths for you? Was it your personality? Did you work on it? Did you have mentorship or guidance? Did you take a class? And then put a star or an asterisk by 1 or 2 that you struggle with. And the potential topic is, how could you learn and grow in that area? How could you, if you wanted to light some fire underneath 1 or more of these, which one, what would you do and why? If you're watching the video, I certainly encourage you to actually have the conversation with it. And I will put a link to the evaluation for you to spend a moment doing that. And then as I wind down this 30 minutes and press stop recording, I will also say to some folks here, if you need to disappear right away because you got another meeting or your brain is full, I would love it. Tim's got to run, no problem. If you've got a second to click on the Google form and say, and give us a little bit of feedback, and I'll put that link also in an email that I shoot to you all afterwards. With that, let me remove the spotlight, and then let me briefly put us all on gallery view. And can you all just wave goodbye so that we can turn the recording off? Yay!